Oh, what? I'm supposed to forget that she totally sucked all the fun out of my childhood?
You're exaggerating.
One of my earliest memories is Vanessa yanking a pacifier out of my mouth and saying, Matthew, what's next, a cigarette? To this day, every time I see a pack of Marlboros, I have to tinkle.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about tonight?
This week, we're talking about the shows of the delightful Matthew Perry.
The late, great Matt Perry. Matthew, it was Matt LeBlanc and Matthew Perry.
Right,
so
and didn't people call him Matty?
I believe his friends called him Matty, but we'll stick with the formal instead. Yeah, we're doing one of our spotlight shows where we break our usual trope-based format, and we're going to sort of chart the career of a sitcom icon, somebody who had many shows built around them. So I've been thinking about this, for the last couple days, like just how to sort of get into this conversation, because I just find this topic fascinating in general. Like the casts of Friends and Seinfeld and the careers that they had afterwards, in some way being kind of a metaphor for life, and how it's not cumulative. It's not, you don't start at grade 1 and then end at grade 12 and get handed your diploma and everything gets bigger and better. That's how it is in school. But in life, sometimes, you reach your, by some measures, your greatest achievements when you're in your 20s or 30s or early 40s or whatever it is. And, you have a whole lifetime, a whole career of ups and downs and different projects and stuff that are all sort of in the echo of these early accomplishments.
Right.
And
I wonder if, I've thought about that as well. And I wonder, because I think, from a fame perspective and from a public perspective, right? I think Lisa Kudrow's HBO show, The Comeback, sort of tackled a lot of this in like the weird, way. The premise of that show is that she was like a washed up sitcom actress, and she was gunning
meta.
Yeah, she was gunning for a comeback. But so what I really find fascinating about all of this is that I think that, yes, from the public perspective, right, from the outside, it looks like maybe Matt LeBlanc had Joey and, it failed. And so what else has he done?
You're referring to the show,
Friends.
Joey, the spinoff.
Yes, exactly. And what else has he done since Friends, right? And we talked about this a little bit with our Julia Louis-Dreyfus episode, where it was the same kind of thing. It was like she kept trying to have different sitcoms after Seinfeld, and some things hit. Nothing was ever as big as that, But I think, and obviously she's an outlier, right? But I think it's from the inside perspective, from the personal perspective, not from the public looking on. It is sort of more cumulative, right? You are exploring different aspects of things. We're going to see that on Matthew Perry's journey, he goes from being this scrappy, I want to be famous. I am, cranking every pilot season for 10 years in a row. He had a pilot basically every single year that didn't get picked up. And 3 out of the 10 years it did get picked up, and then, was half a season and got canceled, or was one season and got canceled before Friends hit. And he's not the only one, right? Jennifer Aniston, kind of a similar thing, right? And I think that on the other side of a big, huge hit, just because you had a big, huge hit, it usually has to do with more of like the petri dish and the ecosystem that you're in, not just your own stardom.
So many things, so many intersecting things. And of course, we're talking about actors, performers. So this is different than a band, a musician who writes their own songs. And sure, they're good looking and charismatic, but they also have their own artistic voice, for better or worse, their responsibility, filmmakers, writers, etc. With actors, especially these kind of actors, like they're really, this isn't, Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, like they were stand-ups. They generated their own material until they didn't have to. Whereas these sitcom actors, like they're actors. That's what they do. And they're sort of subject to the opportunities that come their way.
Yeah. And Matthew Perry did turn that corner. Like that was kind of where I was headed with my long-winded explanation there. But his later shows, like the last 3 shows we're going to talk about after Friends, he was an executive producer and a writer and a creator and a showrunner on all of them in different combinations of those roles.
Part of that, I mean, you see the same thing with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That is one of the results of the huge fame, is that whether or not your shows succeed, you get to have the executive producer title and the responsibilities if you want that. I'll ask you, let's travel back in time. Let's say it's 98, 99. Friends is wrapping up. All of those actors, the 6, were all in major motion pictures to one extent or another. But I would say probably before Friends had even wrapped. I was saying,
what was Joey in?
He was in one with the monkey, where he was like a wrapped up.
He was in one with the monkey.
It's absolutely true. Matt LeBlanc monkey movie, Ed, the 1996 film Ed. So to my point, that's 1996. Friends hasn't even wrapped yet.
Yeah.
I feel like Schwimmer was the first one that I remember kind of crossing over with the Pallbearer movie.
Right.
And then Matthew Perry had the one with Salma Hayek. Mm-hmm. And they were all in movies. Romy and Michelle, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So as Friends is wrapping up, I think you watched it, right? You were, at least a casual fan of it, as we all were. Did you have an opinion, a horse in that race? Did you feel like any of them were sort of destined to be, to sort of reach that next level, to become a Robin Williams or Adam Sandler or someone who was, really like a major star in movies or, had another major TV career? Like, was there one of them that you were the most optimistic about?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry both, to me, had the riz, right? Like, to me, they were the ones Jennifer Aniston at that point, she was married to Brad Pitt and was just like a mega star because of this famous relationship on top of her famous TV show and the Emmys and all this other stuff. And so, I had the idea, like I thought that she would kind of take that and run with it. But her niche turns out to be these, sort of like Jason Bateman, Paul Rudd comedies. And that's what I thought was kind of, that to me was a turn, right? Like I didn't expect that from her, but I enjoyed her in them. And then that's kind of like where she stayed, right? Yeah. And with Matthew Perry, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, to me, it was such a crime that show got canceled. It was so brilliantly written. He was the exact right actor to do that Sorkin material. It was a really wonderful moment and show for him. And I think that was the vehicle that if anything was going to work, it was going to be that, right? You pair him and his personality and charisma with the right writing and all of that. And it was just going to, explode. But history likes to burn us sometimes. And so I think for him, that, like, to me, him in a TV show like that's kind of where I saw him going. I never saw him being like a movie star winning Oscars. You know what I mean? Because he's more like a funny kind of guy. Like TV is his realm, I feel like.
Yeah, I think of all of them, Aniston ended up being the most sort of robust actor. You know, she was in a handful of movies that I haven't seen that, you know, like that movie Cake, that was like a sort of Oscar-y movie. And now she does The Morning Show. That's really good on Apple. Like, I feel like she's the one that, yeah, can do sort of like drama and more intense stuff. But yeah, in terms of charisma, I think Matthew Perry would be the one that's sort of going into the 21st century. You know, him being in a movie would make it, you know, would just make it more interesting of like, oh yeah, that it had a certain appeal, I think. Definitely more so than like if Matt LeBlanc or David Schwimmer were in a movie.
Yeah. He definitely could have gone that like Matthew McConaughey route and just done, you know, found his Kate Hudson and just done like 4 movies.
Well, so you're talking about a specific point in Matthew McConaughey's career, because he went way past that.
Of course.
Here's the thing, and this is, I guess, what we'll talk about as we go through the shows. You know, when we've done this before, especially with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, there was like, okay, we narrowed in on her sort of superpowers, her real strengths as an actor, as a comedian, and they were undeniable. I'm curious to see like what we sort of find with Matthew Perry. I'm not as fully sold as you are, especially Studio 60. You know, I'm definitely not as fully sold on Aaron Sorkin as you are. That's a conversation for another day. But, you know, that show famously only lasted 1 season. Now there's a little bit of an eye of the beholder thing, you know. Was that maybe because Matthew Perry was not the right person to center that show that it didn't do better? Probably not. There's lots of reasons. The consensus is that it maybe wasn't the best idea to make a deadly serious show about the making of a comedy show.
But it wasn't deadly serious. It was a lot of fun.
And I think it is a good premise for a show. I've read Matthew Perry's book, and when he, you know, I read it a long time ago, so unfortunately I'll try to, you know, pepper in insights here or there. I don't remember it that clearly, but I do remember him talking about the experience of working with Aaron Sorkin, and I think their opinions, both he and Sorkin, were that they were not a perfect fit. I think that Matthew Perry did not like the rigidity of Aaron Sorkin's world. He famously demands, you know, picture letter perfect recall and everything, and Sorkin didn't like Perry's ideas. You know, when he would say, hey, what if I would do this? Sorkin was kind of like, why don't you not do that and do what I wrote instead?
Do what I wrote, because I am the genius. Thank you very much.
And what I'll say is, having listened to that book that he wrote, you know, very shortly before his untimely demise. He's not necessarily my favorite actor. He doesn't come across as like the absolute most like worldly and intellectual guy, but he's unpretentious. He's straightforward, and he had this sort of earnestness. And I just kind of got the feeling from his worldview, from the personality I got from that book, that if you compare him to, say, a Jeff Daniels or some of the other lead actors that Sorkin worked with, he maybe isn't interested in pursuing the same things and wouldn't necessarily have the same goals, and just wouldn't totally be on the same page.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of that pairing, right? Like, Matthew Perry was never going to peace out on TV and go to Broadway. Aaron Sorkin, the Sorkin players, are all people who, you know, you could blink your eye and they'd be on a Broadway stage winning Tonys. And that's the pace of the dialogue. That is the, you know, everything's about the words. Whereas Matthew Perry, he comes from a different place, right? Like there was in this early show that we watched, he reminded me so much of William Ragsdale, the guy who was Herman in Herman's Head.
Yeah.
And they have that same sort of, like you're saying, guy from Ohio kind of energy. Like they both have that earnestness.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think Matthew Perry, that we're going to see over and over again, that he brings to his roles is the sort of winking, like it is Chandler. You could say he's just doing Chandler over and over again, but when you watch the shows that come before that, you realize that's him. Like that's how he plays basically everything. And the only one I've ever seen him not play like that was Studio 60, and it was good.
Right.
He was able to do some drama and still bring the funny when he had somebody telling him not to do this other stuff.
No, I mean, I would argue he's still a sarcastic character. Like, he was cast in Studio 60 for a reason.
He is, but it's not the same sort of...
It's not the same. I would say...
Like, loosey-goosey tie and, you know, I'm walking into the bright set. Like, it felt different.
Yeah, I'll shout out, you know, sort of guilty pleasure movie of mine, not Sweet 17, 17 Again.
Yes,
I think the movie where... Matthew Perry turns into Zac Efron, his teenage self. I think Zac Efron is a really funny actor. And that's one where he gets to be kind of sweet and sincere because he's sort of a sad sack at the beginning. And then it's kind of sentimental at the end. He's not really doing a ton of sarcasm. But here's the thing. I think, ironically, the farthest that Matthew Perry ever got from that sarcastic Chandler character is Chandler in the latter portion of Friends. Like, that's when he was most sincere. Like, when I think of him being furthest from that personality,
when they're trying to have a baby, and he's like
I picture
in
him
love
giving
with Monica.
Yeah, those warm smiles to Courtney Cox and those cheesy speeches at the ends of the episodes and stuff. Like, yeah, like by the end of Friends, he almost had totally shed that.
So then may I suggest you watch a few more episodes of the third show that we watched, Go On.
Yeah, well, we'll get to my opinions of that. The one other thing I just want to say from the book about his, you know, talking about his sort of overall persona, he mentions how that cadence, right? Could I be any more sarcastic?
Right.
That was a thing that he came up with as a kid with his friends, the Murray brothers. I remember that because his friend was Chris Murray, and I had a childhood friend named Chris Murray, and that was just a thing they did. Just a way that they talked. And so, yeah, he didn't think to do that on this Home Free show, but then he brought that in to Chandler, and that became one of the early sort of, you know, Kramer had the busting in through the door, right? Chandler had his weird way of saying things. And then he points out in the book that after whatever, season 4 or whatever, they stopped doing that completely. Like, they just made the decision, it's getting old. We're not going to do that.
They had the joke, right, of Joey coming in, be like, hey, I'm Chandler. Could I be wearing any more clothes?
But it wasn't like, you know, oh, let's have Urkel maybe say, did I do that once every 4 episodes instead of once every 2? Like, they really just got rid of it. And yet it was so iconic that, like, I feel like most of us never even noticed. Like, we just still associate that with Chandler, even though we recognized he got more mature and everything.
Well, and that's the thing. I think what we kept seeing through the other episodes were these Perryisms, right? That if you're only familiar with his work in Friends, you're like, oh, that's Chandler. But it's like we talk about all the time. There are pieces of actors that are themselves in every character that they play. And in, you know, Matthew Perry's case, and also I think in Julia Louis-Dreyfus's case, those elements are the like magic. Now, I think hers is a lot more versatile and powerful than Perry's is.
Yes. Well, and she for whatever reason, she got to do better projects, in my opinion. But yeah, we're talking about the kind of actor. This is not Daniel Day-Lewis or Gary Oldman. These are not people that are chameleons and disappear into a role and build it from the ground up.
Right.
These are people that we love them because they have a certain personality. They channel it in different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have these tics and signature things that they do that we love. They have these personas. And so, yeah, Matthew Perry had in Friends that particular emphasis that was like one thing we can check off. Okay, he gave that to the culture. We'll always have that. Matthew Perry gave us going, could that candle be any brighter? So beyond that, I guess that's what I'm looking to these 4 other shows for, is there anything beyond that, or was he just a generally charming sitcom actor who got, a big break and therefore got to be in movies and have shows built around him? What else is going on there with him, right?
No, I think that is a good way to kind of think about a good thread to think about as we go through the shows. So here's what we watched. We watched Home Free, which was the last pilot series that it did get picked up to series that Matthew Perry did before Friends. So it's from 1993, and we watched the pilot episode, and then our other 3 episodes are post Friends. So we have Mr. Sunshine, and we watched episode 1 of that. We have Go On. We also watched the pilot, and The Odd Couple. We watched season 1, episode 12, The Audit Couple. That one has our Becker rule, right? Because
we were following the Becker rule. We watched the first episode of Becker because it was a podcast like this where we're just trying to sort of get a sense of the series. And yeah. And it was one of the most odious things I've ever experienced. And we decided from then and there, if it's a show that's had 3 seasons or more, let's just look up online what a good episode is instead of watching the first one.
Right.
Because
and so what that tells you, though, is that Home Free, Mr. Sunshine, and Go On were all 1-season wonders. In fact, they were all half-season wonders. Every single one of them, I think, was a mid-season replacement, or if it wasn't, it was canceled kind of midway through the series. I need to double check Go On that because, they did have a full season. Go On was a 22 episode season, but the others were both mid-season replacements and were canceled.
Yes, but not The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple ran for 3 seasons.
Yes.
And so that's
why it was allowed for the Becker rule.
So yeah, this guy, he had a hard time making things stick after Friends.
But this is just normal. This isn't just making things stick after Friends. Like, this is normal television.
Oh yeah, I'm not blaming him per se, but I'm saying that it was rough going. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. Home Free, like you said, this is before Friends. This is very much early 90s vests and faded jeans and floppy hair.
I mean, he looks just like Chandler. He's wearing
early Chandler.
Yes, the exact
early,
same
skinny,
like
preppy Chandler.
Dress shirt, tie, and jeans.
I'm gonna start this off with a hot take here. Tucking a shirt into jeans is an inherent fallacy. It's an inherently illogical thing to do. If you're wearing jeans, you're not dressed nicely. Like, you don't, this thing in the 90s, I guess people still do it, of like being sort of dressed up but wearing jeans, I just find to be a contradiction in terms.
You're wrong. There are such thing as dressy jeans. You just don't wear jeans, so you don't know.
All right. Well, that's his look. He is very much a dressy jeans guy.
In this series, he is a journalist. He's very young. He's just getting his start. He is supposed to be in like his mid-20s. He talks about 10 years ago when he was in high school because he has a run-in with his former principal. So he's young, like early 20s. He's a journalist at a paper. Dan Schneider from Head of the Class and also of iCarly
Yes.
Shame he's in the show. He's a fellow journalist.
Yeah, he's the wisecracking, horny best friend.
Yeah, his good buddy at work. And then we also have, was it Brooke Thiel, I think is her last name?
Yeah,
or Tice, something like that. You know her from...
Yeah, she's from Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And
I know her
Just
from
the
Just the 10 of Us. Exactly. She's the oldest sister. She was the blonde. So anyway, Brooke Tice or Thiel, I can't remember her last name right now. She is a hot photographer at the station that both... So he and his buddy, played by Dan Schneider, they are both like interested in this photographer. But the real heart of the show, right, is that he lives at home with his mom because he's
home free.
Yeah, he's pinching pennies. But then his oldest sister, he's the youngest of three, she is getting a divorce and she moves back into the mom's house with two kids, a middle schooler and an elementary schooler. And now... he and his sister never really got along because she was kind of, a hard ass, sort of like Ferris Bueller's sister, always trying to get him in trouble. And he's not happy about the situation, but they're learning the lessons of how to live together, right? That is the premise of Home Free.
Yeah. It's a lame Full House knockoff. He's a grown man that lives at home. His mom seems to like that he lives at home. He's a rascal. In all of these shows, he's a rascal, right?
Yeah.
He's
who he is.
Yes.
He's got the twinkle in his eye.
He's always a rascal. His sister's uptight, like you said. She moves in with kids. The crux of this particular episode is going to be about him taking the kids on a trip or, taking them on an assignment, pulling them out of school, being kind of a bad influence on them because then the daughter skips school and thinks nothing of it. It's just like you take a step back and it's like, a handful of adults and some kids, and there's going to be lesson learning. And, one of the adults is uptight and one of them is crazy and silly.
It's a totally formulaic sitcom. The writing was not great. Like, it's just one of these ones that
very unremarkable
in
the worst way.
The only standout for me in this show was actually, Matthew Perry's good. Obviously, he was the main standout. One of the reasons why he kept getting pilots every year. But, so the mom, she was very recognizable to me. And I'm like, she must be a Broadway person. Cause like, she just looked really familiar. Her name in real life is Marion Mercer. And sure enough, she won a Tony for Promises, Promises. She is a Broadway actress. And she is also one of these, sitcom actors that has been in one episode of everything. Similar to Matthew Perry, she has a pilot every couple of years that gets picked up and she gets a few episodes as a main character, or she'll get an arc on some show of, 3 or 4 episodes. And that is that's the working actor's life. I just love to see that when it's, my Broadway folks and it's like, you got a Tony and now you pay the bills and you just, churn out these sitcoms.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the critical scene in this show is when Matthew Perry is talking to his niece, his sister's daughter, about why she can't skip school or whatever. He had taken her to a zoo or an aquarium
they went
or something.
He took both the kids out on an assignment because they both, especially the older daughter, was really unhappy about the move. And he was like, and she was writing this essay about, the place being shambles and horrible. So he says, come on out on this assignment. It's on a boat. It'll be fun. And then it really did turn into an adventure because it was this dolphin that was beached and they were able to get him free.
Later on, when he's talking to her and he's talking about the dolphin and going well, the dolphin was just trying to protect her kids or whatever. And it's like you see on his face, he's educating himself as well as the girl. Yeah, he's like, oh my God, I'm making a point here.
How often has that happened when you've been talking to Oscar that you learned your own lesson?
Not like this. This was just very silly the way he's I found anyway, the way he's explaining this to the girl, and then you see in his face, my God, I understand now. I understand what my sister was doing. And so, I thought Full House the way he then has to reconcile with the sister, and it sort of ends with we'll try our best to get along. As you could tell.
Right. This is teeing up. This is the reason for the entire series, right? Because he says he's going to leave because he's like, oh, I've got to give them the space. Like, I can't be messing around with her parenting.
He tells his mom and his sister, I got a big raise, so I'm gonna move out. And his mom goes, he must be lying. In this goofed up economy, there's no way he got a raise. It's the early 90s. But this is like a time of prosperity, right? What, I don't remember the economy being so bad that if somebody said to you, I got a raise, you would immediately go, impossible. The economy under, George H.W. Bush has collapsed.
There was a reason he was a one-term president. And I think this is where this phrase comes from. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah, maybe. But I did not buy that the mom knew he couldn't have possibly gotten a raise just because of the economy. But
they made multiple references to it. His boss said earlier, if the economy was better, you'd be getting a big raise.
Maybe this came out like during a recession or something. But as you can tell, I don't want to really get bogged down with the story for this one. It's very simple. What really struck me was, like I said, how sort of patched together it is from Full House and the Brady Bunch and whatever other things.
It really just feels like Hogan family. It feels like all of these early 90s sitcoms where they had like a star in them and then they sort of built this random cast around them. This one feels like that, but it doesn't have the star.
Right. But then you compare it to Friends, right? Which is also a low concept thing. It's not like Friends had some sort of amazing idea or a big celebrity going into it.
Well, but it had the production team of Cheers.
Yeah. What it had was a sense of humor and a point of view. It had ideas. Like, they had ideas for stories and jokes and characters and stuff. So it's like, oh, what if in this one of them, they have to pee on the other one because they got eaten by a jellyfish, and then that's going to create all of this awkwardness and stuff. It wasn't like all of this bullshit. Oh, what if they get mad at each other and then they make up? What if the uncle is kind of a bad influence on the niece, but then they realize that he's actually helping her come out of her shell? It's one thing to hit the sitcom tropes in terms of have him get stuck in an ATM booth or something. But the way that a show like this is just it just is not bringing anything to the table in terms of ideas.
Yeah.
And then those shows like Seinfeld and Friends, which are unfortunately still very much caught in the sort of white hetero mindset, still at least had people that were no, we have some new stuff, we have some new ideas. And you see why, it's just such a stark contrast of how it's got the same cheesy hair and clothes as the beginning episodes of Friends, but it's just so different.
Yeah.
I just can't say it any other way. They just don't have the ideas that Friends has.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down, and you'll see this over and over and over again, right? Sitcoms making it. Number one, do they have talent in the writer's room? Right?
Yeah.
That will make or break you. And then if you do have talent in the writer's room, then it's about luck. This is the closest one to Friends the closest series to Friends that Matthew Perry did, right? He was in some other 13, 12, 11, half season series before this one, going back into the late 80s when he first was on our TV screens, and not counting his guest appearances, right? But he is very charismatic in all of them, but all of them are some dumb formula, right? Like one of them is Valerie Bertinelli. It was called Sydney, and she was a detective or whatever. And he was in it. He was her brother. But yet, like, they're all boring. They don't make it for a reason. And then there are the ones that I will argue that he was in after Friends that the reasons they don't make it aren't the writing.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, it's the same thing with like that show Malloy. This was a show that I remember watching that had Mayim Bialik.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Aniston was the older sister. So you look back on that and you're like, all right, so what was the difference? Malloy, Blossom, who cares? It was a show about Mayim Bialik as a teenager. And it was like, at first she was Malloy, then she was Blossom. But I'd venture to guess that like Malloy, even though I don't know which name I prefer, but it's an equally interesting name, but it probably was like generic situations and humor and stuff. Whereas Blossom had just a little bit more of a point of view with the daughter of the hippie and everything. And same thing with
the dad was a musician and the older brother was a drug addict.
All right. We've beat up on this one too much. So we have to imagine now we're sort of going through the time dilator, right? Friends happens.
Yes.
It's on for 10 years. So we see him age from this person that we're seeing on this lame sitcom with the floppy hair and all skinny and everything. And he does the whole Chandler arc.
Yeah.
You know, he's in several movies in that time. The movie, is Fools Rush In the one with Salma Hayek?
Yes.
I think it is. And The Whole Nine Yards with Bruce Willis,
Yes.
I think is before the end of Friends. So yeah, he's like poised. You know, they all are. They're all millionaires. He dated Julia Roberts for a while during the run of Friends, who was, you know, younger people might not know, like she was for a while there, like truly top of the A-list celebrities, you know, at the time that he was with her. And that's why she guested on Friends, just like Brad Pitt did. So just, yeah, like the world is his oyster.
I love that story, how he asked her out via fax machine.
Yeah.
Like it's so 90s. It's so painful.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that. But yeah, he went into all of that in his book. But then, yeah, this Mr. Sunshine thing, we're already leaping. This is past Studio 60 not working out.
Yes.
Right? This is his handful of movies not doing super well. And so like all of them, frankly, to some extent or another, you know, like we said at the beginning, like none of them were Adam Sandler, Robin Williams movie stars. They were all kind of like trying different things. And eventually we end up with this Mr. Sunshine.
Sure. We're watching the pilot. Now, this show is so on the heels of Studio 60 that we have Allison Janney, Sorkin player, and it is directed, the pilot is directed by none other than Tommy Schlamme, who is Aaron Sorkin's go-to television director. He directs almost all of Sports Night. He directs a ton of West Wing episodes. He is the one famous for the Sorkin walk and talk.
The walk and talk.
And that is those long tracking shots through the convoluted hallways. He started doing them at Sports Night, and then that's what West Wing became known for as well. Sort of became like this synonymous thing with Aaron Sorkin. And Tommy Schlamme as a director came up with those ideas because the dialogue was so wordy that you can't just have them sitting in an office or standing in an office and talking. It's like exposition for days. So you got to get them moving. These are busy people. And that is what we get a lot of in this episode. So, and in this series in general. This is a show that I did watch. I liked this show, but not as much as I liked the next one that we're going to watch. I was into this. This also comes after Joey. So you're going to see some other people in this show that are from that. So Andrea Anders, who was the love interest in Joey, the Friends extension, right? Mm-hmm. She was Matt LeBlanc's neighbor and love interest in that show. she is now Matthew Perry's employee and love interest in this show. But so this show is set in an arena. It's in like San Francisco or something, but it's modeled after LA, the basketball arena. And he is the manager of the arena. Allison Janney is the owner of the arena. Andrea Anders is the marketing director. And then you have James Leisure, I don't know how to say his name. He is from the show Vegas, and now that has ended and he has moved on to this. Also in this, you will see, what's his name? The guy with the big bushy hair from Lost.
Oh, Hurley. Yeah.
Yep. And you will see one of the bit players who was like the Chris Farley character in Studio 60 plays Allison Janney's son in this show.
Oh, yeah.
So you got
Isn't
like a whole bunch of people that are all swirling around this like Aaron Sorkin, Matthew Perry friendship.
I would say in general, they're just, they're recognizable people. Definitely, yes. Allison Janney especially. Love her. Here's my big note about this show was like, oh, this is just a clear rebuttal to 30 Rock. Like, to me, I had a very strong 30 Rock vibe from this, which is funny because Studio 60, the whole thing about that was it had a, Armageddon Deep Impact thing going on with 30 Rock, where there was famously those two shows came out at the same time. They were both essentially TV shows about the making of SNL, and 30 Rock was the one that survived. And then it's almost like they just load up Matthew Perry into the next rifle and blast him out into this.
It does have that like workplace, he's got the wacky boss.
That's what made me think
the Alec Baldwin.
When we meet Allison Janney, the scene in her office where we meet her and we get all of her funny tics, and she's on the treadmill while she's telling him what to do, and she's
like, oh, I gotta get this pill out of me, and she's trying to like work it off on an elliptical.
Very silly character, and it's not as though she's specifically like a Jack Donaghy type exactly, but it just really kind of hit me like this is like just that conversation of Matthew Perry and Allison Janney in her office. I'm like, this is like the first scene of a 30 Rock episode with Liz Lemon talking to Jack Donaghy.
Exactly. And James Leisure is Pete, the like her number, or like the balding guy who's like her right-hand man. Absolutely. I think the thing that sort of smacked me in the face right away with this show, though, that didn't hit me in 2011 when I watched it, because it was pre-Me Too, was just like, he's gross. Like, and he is a writer on this show. So he has gone from, doing Sorkin's work in Studio 60 to, hey, I think I'd like to executive produce and also be a writer. So he is writing his own stuff in this show. And this is the one where he's been. And he is like, he's basically just writing himself. You know what I mean? Like, there was so little difference between the character you've seen him play in everything and this. The only main difference is that he is a boss of this arena and he doesn't know any of his employees' names, and he's fucking one of his subordinates. And like, so is another guy, like he's sleeping with her, but like his best friend is also sleeping with her. And I was just like, this place is gross. Yeah.
I would say the difference to me is that he's just more of a straight man. He's surrounded by wacky people. But
he's a dick about it.
Oh, yeah. But I'm just saying, we'll get to his behavior and the story with the woman. I'm just saying.
Not even just with that. I mean, the fact that every single person he runs into in the hallway, he's a bad boss. He is like, what's your name? Oh, I'm already forgetting. Like, that's not nice. That's not cool.
Yeah. And so that's different from his Chandler persona. But just the fact that, again, it's like Liz Lemon or Seinfeld for that matter, where it's like, oh yeah, they're funny and quirky, but it's really everyone around them is like really weird. And so I feel like compared to when he was Chandler, he got to be like kind of the funnier one, or like the more outlandish one a lot of the times. And now he's more of the like, oh my God, all these people are crazy. Like that kind of vibe.
Yes.
And there's two stories. There's like the work story. The circus is coming and he has to figure out what to do to melt the ice from the hockey so that he can have the circus.
Right, because the hot water heater is broken that they usually use to melt it.
Yeah, and then we have the personal story, which is, he has this girlfriend, but they're seeing other people.
Benefits, yes.
Yeah, and she comes to him and says, well, I have to tell you that I'm also seeing your best friend, or Rolando or something.
James Leisure's character.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm going to settle down with him and break it off with you because he's more mature. He wants, he knows what he wants. And then so Ben, Matthew Perry's character, is trying to convince her, like, no, stay with me, break up with him. Like, he doesn't even really seem fazed that he and his friend are both sleeping with her or seeing her.
Well, he just finds out, right? So they have this arrangement. They are no strings attached. We're just having fun. We work together. It's not going to be serious. We're just going to have sex when we feel like it. We're grown-ups, right? And all is well in the world. But he is turning 40. It happens to be his birthday, this pilot episode. And he is contemplating his life and his choices. And there's a great little speech with Allison Janney where she's like, you don't have to worry about being alone. You're an island. You choose this. This is what you want. This is, and he's like nodding along like, yeah. And then she starts talking about herself. And she's like, on the other hand, I can't die alone. I've got to worry about this and that. And he starts to kind of realize that he also is scared about those things. And he's doing some self-reflection in that sitcom-y way that, straight, white men do self-reflection, which is they think about it and then stay the same. And so he was like, oh, maybe I could make an effort to get to know the names of people at work. Maybe I could make an effort to care about what other people are talking about when they speak. Yeah. So it's not that everybody around him is wacky. It's that we're seeing it all from his perspective and he doesn't care, which is exactly what we find out about Liz Lemon when she goes back for her high school reunion, and it turns out she was the asshole all along, and she's like, wait, am I still that? Like, that's what is happening here. And so he tries to sit down with Andrea Ander's character and be like, hey, I think that maybe we should take this. I think we should go out to dinner and try to like move from, this hookup thing we're doing to a relationship. And she's like, you snuck out of your own house this morning, buddy. Like, you're not the guy that I go on a date with.
He's doing the thing of like, he's just sort of recalculating like, oh, okay, let's see. I guess she's putting me to a decision. I guess maybe I do want to stay with her. So I will now put in the effort so that I can accomplish that.
Right. And that's when she drops the bomb that, yes, they're both seeing other people. She just happens to be seeing the other guy that works with them. And he is all about commitment, has been trying to get her to move in with him and commit for a while. It all sounds very dramatic. It is not done that way at all. It is it's very, like you said, it's very 30 Rock. That's an apt comparison.
Yeah, and ultimately his sort of moral lesson that he's going to learn, his little turn, whether you buy it or not, is that eventually he approaches her as a friend and he talks to her in the sort of context of like, oh, let me think of it. Like, here's what I would do if I were you. And, if you need someone to talk to about this dude and how things are going, like I could be a friend to you. And we're just supposed
because I want to try to have friends now because I don't have any friends.
Whatever. We're just supposed to take it as like, oh, he considered being nice and considering someone else's
right. And all they're doing is teeing up a will they, won't they that's meant to run for the series.
This other guy will get like deployed to Afghanistan or something. And obviously it's going to be that, but it's kind of a weird will they, won't they, because they're like banging in the first scene. So it's like, will they, won't they, have a more meaningful relationship?
Yes.
Yeah. Which I guess, maybe for our troubled times, that's
and
more
look,
fitting.
I mean, I said at the beginning of this segment, I liked this show when it was on. I watched it. I was not like, oh man, I can't believe they canceled that when it was canceled. I was like, oh, okay. It was kind of like a whatever, but I did watch it.
I will say this one, parts of it are funny to me. Allison Janney.
It is. She is very funny.
Yeah. Now, I will not I think that 30 Rock is much better than this. I think good shows are much better than this, but I don't think that this is like totally lame and worthless. At the end, she goes, I see on the schedule John Cougar Mellencamp is playing tomorrow. I would very much like to make love to him. And, she's just got lots of funny little things like that. The thing about, the way that Ben gets the ice broken is he gives all of the clowns in the circus axes because they love to chop things.
No, there's a million clowns roaming around and they don't have anything to do because they're not loading in or loading out. They're just in costume and terrifying people. So he says, I have a great idea. Do you guys know how to use an axe? And they're all like, yeah. And so then you got 40 clowns hacking up the ice that they can't get melted.
Yeah. In addition to his Chandler cadence, I think one of Matthew Perry's other little sort of minor superpowers is being startled. That's something he did in Friends a lot, and he does it here with his assistant. Just his thing of that kind of, kind of jumping in fright. He's very good at that. The thing with his assistant is at some point she set someone on fire. It's like in the past. That's
Recent
her backstory.
Past.
Yeah. And he's trying to get all of the details about that. What do you mean she set someone on fire? Why? And so when he meets her and she's got that kind of wide-eyed, manic sort of vibe.
Yes,
and she's
but
funny.
it's this like doe-eyed young, ingenue thing. She's this, very cute, young, doe-eyed girl. And then it's just the shock of like, what do you mean she set her boyfriend, her last boyfriend on fire?
Yeah.
Because of some breakup.
Yeah. So I could see that being funny. Allison Janney at the end, she's been talking the whole time about how she wants the different kids of these different demographics. And she's talking about it in a very tacky way of, I need an Asian kid. I need a black kid, whatever. And then
she's terrified of clowns.
Yeah. They establish she's terrified of clowns. So when all the clowns show up at the end with their axes because they've been chopping up the ice, she starts screaming clowns with axes and holds up the little Asian kid as a human shield.
Black kid. She holds up one of the little black kids as a human shield.
Okay, I thought it was the Asian kid.
And then starts trying to throw the child at them, and then eventually does throw the child at the clowns with axes. And this is at a press junket, so all these photographers are coming and taking a million pictures. And the whole reason she's doing this press junket is that she owned a sweatshop or something, and she got was about to get canceled for owning this sweatshop.
Yeah.
And so she had to have this like charity event, and then the charity event goes sideways. And this happens to her constantly. This is basically like just her MO. She's always trying to stay one step ahead of the PR of her, of her own racism.
Yeah. And so I feel like, honestly, again, that character, like she's a combination of Michael Scott and Jack Donaghy and those kind of like clueless boss characters. But Allison Janney getting to be silly is very funny.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's my kind of take on this show in general. There's a failure of imagination. This is another case of things being patched together from stuff that's already out there and working on other shows. But this one does have just like very strong building blocks. There was nobody, frankly, including Matthew Perry at the time, there was nobody on that Home Free show that was like, oh my God, like give me more of this mom/sister character, is like, whereas with this one, it's like, yes, I will watch this funny assistant girl. I will watch Allison Janney. Like I could see this being a fun show, even though it didn't necessarily have a lot of great ideas. And I think of all the ones we're going to see, It's the one that uses Perry the least, I feel like, that uses his persona.
Right.
It's more of just kind of like you're saying, it's like, oh, it's kind of autobiographical. It's kind of like, let's give you a show about this guy who's a little bit of a creep and he's going to learn to be a better guy. And he's got a stressful job because we've seen how that, that makes for good comedy. So, he's going to learn to be a better guy and he's going to deal with weird, stressful stuff.
Yeah. And I think you're right, though, in what they did different this time was that they weren't, and this is his show that's after Friends, right? This is the first one.
But Studio 60 was before
No.
this,
But I
right?
mean, as a sitcom,
yeah,
right, where it's like obviously he wasn't going to be playing the same character in a Sorkin drama, right? But in a sitcom, I think it's really refreshing that he was doing something different. He was, like you're saying, he's trying to play this sort of straight man with all the crazy around him. It doesn't work in multiple ways, but he is good in this. I would like to see another episode because I don't really remember, it was like 13, 14 years ago at this point. I'd like to see another couple episodes just to see like more of his magic. But that's the thing. It's such a bummer that what we're looking for, right, is like, what is the thing that makes you so great? Why is it that we love you so much? And all we still have after 2 episodes of these, random shows plus Friends is you've got charisma and timing.
Yeah. He's funny. Like, again, I don't think he's revolutionizing anything. But yeah, like I said, in this one, you see when he jumps and gets startled or has a weird reaction to something somebody says, like, he definitely has a certain something, whether or not it's on the level of some of the other icons,
Sure.
we've talked about. All right, let's move on to Go On.
Go on.
All right, so let's start there. The way you just said go on, is that why the show is called this? Explain the title.
I'm totally guessing, but the premise of the show is that he is trying to move on after the surprise car accident death of his wife.
So yeah, it's, I guess, okay. So it kind of has a double meaning, maybe, that it means that, like, to go on, go on with life. And then it means go on as in the kind of smarmy thing that a Matthew Perry type character would say.
And he is a sports talk show host.
Yeah,
so
he has to go on the air.
He can't go back on the air. He can't go on the air until he takes care of his grief.
Yes, fair enough. So, okay, so it does have many meanings. I think it's a weird name for a show. Anyway, I feel like this is the one that we're really going to differ on.
Well, and you're just wrong.
All right, fair enough. You've alluded several times to liking this, and this being your favorite of the bunch.
Yeah,
and
this was a show that I watched. This was a show that I was sad when it got canceled. I was surprised that it got canceled. It did very well in like critical reviews. It was one of those ones, like it was called, it was like possibly the best new show of the season, one of those kinds of things. And it suffered the fate of coming out in 2011, 2012, when the metrics for a network TV show were still saying that in order to not get canceled, you had to have this big of a share, but streaming had taken that over and the networks hadn't adjusted their metrics yet.
This was, the age of famously good shows like Community and Brooklyn Nine-Nine getting canceled and people having to start petitions and getting them picked up by other shows. So yeah, I can see that it could be a popular or well-liked or quality show, and it still sort of suffered this fate.
Yeah.
Why don't you already sort of did it a little bit. Give us the gist of this. What's the premise here?
Yeah. So, like I said, he's getting over the death of his wife, and his very lovely boss, his like producer at the
John
radio,
Cho.
played by John Cho at the radio station, and his assistant, played by an actress that I had not really ever seen before, young woman.
One of the few, because this is a pretty stacked cast.
Yeah, exactly. And they basically are like, you can't come back on the air until you go to 10 sessions with a grief counselor.
Yes, this is weirdly, this is like the heavy, weighty version of the Seinfeld, the delivery boy has to be your butler, the court-ordered,
right.
Wacky situation. It's not court-ordered in this case, it's boss-ordered.
Right. It feels very much, and I kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking about it in the intro, but it feels a lot like Community, right? Because you have this sarcastic, successful guy having to go into this group, right? In Community, it's community college. Here, it's at this community center, and it is like the Transitions Grief Relief Group or something like that. It's got a very flowery name.
Yes, and in both cases, he's too cool for the room.
Exactly. And he's got all these different ideas, and he's able, through his own charisma, to kind of upend things and manipulate situations so that he can get through them the way he wants to get through them, right? And then you have the wacky cast of characters all hanging out in this community kind of room, right? Which is the study,
group therapy.
Right? All the people who are also getting over different things. You don't find out until kind of midway through the third episode, I think, what everyone is truly dealing with grieving wise. But it's some people, they lost their cat. One of the characters, she lost her cat. One of the characters, her fiance dumped her. Several of the characters, someone died. One of the characters, somebody's in a coma. But I mean, you're not wrong when you're saying that this is a stacked cast of characters, right? You've got, what is the teacher's, the young man teacher's name from, Abbott Elementary?
His name is Tyler James Williams, and I had to
he's in this.
Yeah, he's in this. I had to look him up before we started this segment to make sure that I wasn't being racist in remembering.
Because he's so young.
It's not just that. He was in so many things at this time, so many different TV shows in like a pretty substantial role that I started getting worried. Like, am I thinking of 2 or 3 different people and lumping them all in? No,
together.
It was the same kid who was the title character in Everybody Hates Chris.
Yes.
He had a arc on The Walking Dead. He was in this show, Dear White People on Netflix. He was in, he's in Abbott Elementary. He was popping up in everything. And, like I said, in these kind of substantial roles. And he's in this too. And you have Seth Morris, who I recognize. He's a sort of like comedy bang bang, like funny improv comedy type guy.
I didn't know who that guy was. You've got Brett Gelman, who is in Fleabag, who always plays like a weird, creepy guy. Yeah, very funny in this. Julie White is I'm fairly certain she's a lesbian, or she might be bi, but she's talking about her partner who died.
Oh, the
who's
older
another
lady.
Woman.
She's very funny. I think she's kind of my favorite of the group.
Yeah, and she's a hard ass. And then you have the group leader, who is Tony Award winner Laura Benanti.
Yeah, who go figure is a young, hot woman that's sort of charmed by him.
Yeah, but is not the love interest. It's creepy because what they end up doing when they knew they were getting the axe is that his assistant, who is half his age, becomes like the weird love interest.
Your therapist is also a fucked up love interest. Yeah.
But she's more age appropriate.
No, fair enough. She's older. Yeah.
And then you have Susie Nakamura, who she is like this uptight woman. Her fiance left her, and her thing is that she thinks everything's too sexual. There's an episode where somebody gets a cat, and she's like, cats are too sexual. They rub on you all the time.
Yeah. And so the story of this episode is going to be, he goes to this therapy. He's got the sort of, like I said, too cool for the room.
Right. He's got to get his paper signed. Yeah. 10 sessions.
Yeah. Typical sitcom premise where you have to do this against your will. You have to show up and participate in this thing. And so then when the therapist has to leave and she's like, oh, so-and-so, hold down the fort or whatever. And it's a little bit of like...
She doesn't have to leave. She's running late.
Okay, well, sure, whatever it is. Long story short, Matthew Perry gets them all riled up. He goes like, hey, let's everybody have like a misery contest or a tragedy contest.
Well, so it's again, the writing is better than you're giving it credit for.
I guess.
Because that's not how it went down.
Okay, explain.
Well, so they are having their session as normal, and the girl who plays Yolanda, Susie Nakamura, is like teacher's pet, right? She's got her little notebook. She's very like by the book, and she's like, well, Lauren doesn't like it. Lauren is played by Laura Benanti. She's the group leader. Lauren doesn't like it when we compare because they started doing their normal talking thing, and then there was some crosstalk. And she's reminding the group one of the ground rules. And he interrupts Matthew Perry's character is named Ryan, and he interrupts and he's like, wait. He's like, it's natural for humans to compare. That's what we do. We compete. And he gives a quick little speech. And then he's like, come on, that's exactly what we should do here. And he makes like a bracket, just like March Madness. And then Owen, who is Tyler James Williams' character, he pops up and he's like, we should call it March Sadness. Yeah. And Ryan is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't come up with that. That is the best name ever. And then it goes to commercial, and then we come back and we get the quick cuts of everybody.
A montage of everybody making their case, just, head to head, just like a bracket system.
Exactly.
We didn't mention Bill Cobb,
yes,
very, very familiar, old-timey black character actor that shows up as the blind man who's like sort of, climbing the ranks.
Whose grief is worse? He wins round one by going, I'm blind.
Yeah. And, so the idea is like they're all having a good time, doing this. And it seems to have this therapeutic value. And I will admit, like, it's funny. The montage, the scenes, a lot of them are funny. Again, the actors are very good. Yeah. And so it's sort of ends with this kind of like, this Ryan guy, Matthew Perry character, like, we all kind of like him. We're having a good time. And then the therapist comes back in, and it's the vibe of Sally Field and Mrs. Doubtfire, or Maggie Smith in Sister Act. She's kind of a bummer. She's the authority figure. Come on, everybody. This isn't what we're supposed to be doing. And then when he goes and talks to her at the end, like I said, we seem to sort of get the beginnings of this antagonistic flirtation. Are they going to be a thing? But in typical like episode 1 fashion, we get him convincing her to sign the thing and going, all right, fine, I'll sign it. You don't have to come anymore. And then, for reasons we can get into if we feel like it, it turns out at the end, he realizes he does in fact need therapy, and he comes back and tries to take things a little more seriously and open up. And that sort of sets up the premise of what the show is going to be, right? That he's reluctantly submitting himself to this therapy. Exactly.
And what we find out in that conversation where he's like walking her out to the car and like, she won't sign the paper and all of that. She gets into her car and is like, I will only sign that paper if you had done one thing that was serious, if you did one little thing or participated in any little way, I would have signed your paper for today. And he gets into the car with her and is like, no, listen. And that's when we find out that she's not qualified.
Yeah. She's in over her head.
Well, she basically started this group at a community center of her own volition. Yeah. She is not a licensed therapist. She has no grief counseling experience.
A little bit like Britta as a psychologist.
Exactly, right? Another community parallel. And so she is like, oh, I did a really good job motivating people on Weight Watchers. And by the way, I lost 40 pounds.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of a joke, the reveal that her, whatever her sort of like clinical experiences that she's pointing to is a Weight Watchers thing. But I don't know. To me, it's almost neither here nor there because she is conducting herself with aplomb in these.
Well, but that's the thing. He writes her off in that moment. And she, like you said, she writes him off as well. She's like, well, I'm going to sign your paper, get the hell out of my car.
You're disruptive as hell.
Whatever. I don't ever want to see you again, because he called her out. He made her feel very exposed. She was like, I don't want you here. Here, I'm signing your paper. You're done.
He also lied to her about what his grief was and then kind of like put it in her face like, haha, you believed me. I made all that up.
Exactly. then we also, there was like
right,
a
we find out that
it's only partly made up. Yeah,
but she says to him pretty much verbatim, like, you have a chip on your shoulder, you've got stuff going on that you haven't dealt with, and if you don't address this, if you don't, work on yourself, you're going to explode.
Yes.
And then there's a subsequent scene where he yells at an athlete.
Terrell Owens, T.O.
Okay, that was lost on me. But he yells at him.
Also, he danced on Dancing with the Stars several seasons ago.
He is in typical, I guess, kind of like Oscar Madison. He's some sort of like sports radio personality.
There are so
right?
many parallels with the jobs that they give him in all of these shows. He's a journalist. He's a sports radio announcer. He runs an arena. He's got to have this like, I got it based on my personality white dude job.
Yeah, and I feel like for a guy in a sitcom, the sort of like, sports writer, that. Yeah, I think that the original Oscar Madison kind of began that cliche.
Exactly. So it's like over and over again.
So it's his job to deal with these celebrity athletes, and he ends up like suddenly yelling at the guy because he was looking at his phone while he was driving. Right. He has this big temper tantrum, and someone says, "Geez, you really exploded." And he's like, I guess the lady psychiatrist, who's not a psychiatrist, was right. And so he kind of reports back to the therapy, interrupting somebody else mid, sharing.
Because he's late, and she was not happy to see him,
But then he comes clean and starts, like I said, sort of like sincerely submitting himself to it.
Well, sincerely-ish, right? As sincerely as he possibly can. But then what they're doing that day, they're doing these like one-on-one role play kind of conversations with each other. And apparently she has emailed out rules ahead of time. And there's some guidelines, and you're meant to come up with 3 words that like encapsulate whatever the experience was. And he's not done the homework. He has no idea what he's supposed to do. He gets paired up with Owen, who is the Tyler, James Williams character. And he is the one whose brother is in a coma, but nobody knows that. The only reason that we as the audience know that his brother is in a coma is because he and Matthew Perry have had several connections over the time. They
had a little moment.
Right. He doesn't speak in group. They have multiple moments. Basically, this is Ryan is the only person that Owen will open up to.
Yeah, and they connect because they laugh at funny videos.
Exactly.
On their phone. Exactly the kind of thing that this fussy, stuck-up therapist wouldn't understand.
Exactly. Funny, like meme kind of videos. Now, this is another little nugget that makes this show remind me of Community. At the very first time he goes to the community center to go to this group, he has his headphones in. He's not really going to pay attention. He sits down and he notices everybody is like getting up and going over to our costume closet and donning medieval gear and jousting and fighting like knights. And he takes his headphones out and he's like, looking for the transitions group. And they point him in the right direction.
Right. He was in the Ren Fair Club or whatever.
Exactly. Some sort of reenactors of, knights and things, all sorts of random Knights of the Round Table, whatever. And so then we have the scene where Owen opens up. Again, he has been coming to session. We find out from Lauren that he's been coming to session for 4 months and has never spoken a word. But within a minute of meeting this Ryan person, he is talking to him. And then we find out that his brother is in a coma because they're looking at these funny videos of people dressing up and doing silly things for the
Google cameras.
For the, Google Earth.
GPS thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Back in the day. I mean, they still do it now, but back when Google was first, those cars were
driving
everywhere.
around taking pictures of everything. And
and people would chase after the car, set up and do some funny little scene and get taken, like their pictures would be taken, and show up on, Google Earth, Google Maps when you look at the real image view. So anyway, this is the video that they're laughing about and they're sharing them with each other and they do not participate in the actual role play activity.
Yeah.
So they come back to group and Lauren is like, Ryan, I know that you read all the preparatory materials that I sent ahead of time. So what are your 3 words? And And he's like, I'm sorry, what? And so then she gets mad at him again because he's not, so this is all in the first episode. He said like 3 separate sessions. He has a meltdown. Like this is a packed show for 22 minutes or whatever. When you think about all these different scenes, all these things that are happening.
When it begins, it is like breathless. Like the first scene is him bursting into the studio at work and going like, okay, I'm back from whatever I wanted. Like it does just throw stuff at you. And yeah, there's all these sessions and, the point where the therapist calls him out and says like, do you buy into what we're doing here at all? He sort of goes into this speech that reminds me of any number of Vince Vaughn movies or something where he's, oh, you got to loosen up, too many rules and, etc.
Yep. And so, but like to thread it all the way back to the nugget of community that I was talking about at the beginning of that long segment is the button on the end of the show is while she's yelling at him, he is like zoning out, looking past her, looking out the windows, and he goes, Owen, and just interrupts her. It is like, Owen, do you see that car out there? Let's go. And gets up and runs out of the room. And everybody's like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And then they come back and the entire group, everybody has donned the medieval gear and is running through the streets chasing after the Google car.
They're all having a great time thanks to Matthew Perry's
except
wacky
for Lauren,
idea.
who's like watching them from the window.
Still the Nurse Ratched. And yeah, the whole significance of that, of course, is that when Matthew Perry and the kid were looking at the funny videos on the phone, the kid goes, yeah, this was the last text my brother sent to me before he went into a coma. And so, that Matthew Perry is able to kind of throw it in her face. Like, I got that out of him. You don't even.
Well, and he didn't know that she didn't know.
Yeah.
He's like, how long something his brother's in a coma. She's like, wait,
right.
He told you that about his brother?
And so clearly, we, the audience, are supposed to be getting that, like, Matthew Perry and all of his wacky ways is a better therapist than this woman.
Or just they're a good match, right? Because she gets the people who are so prone to hide their emotions behind humor or anger or whatever, the masking, she's really good at kind of upending that and being so earnest, whereas he is good with like, hey, sometimes you do need the escape, but let's make the escape meaningful and let's make it be comfortable and joyful.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, pairing you could call an odd couple because that is the very sort of same personality traits at the heart of Oscar and Felix.
Yeah, one person's uptight, the other person is a rascal, like a tale as old as time. I mean, look.
Hey, I was drawing a through line and you are yucking my yum.
It is. I mean, there is a clear through line. Like we said at the beginning, he's playing, the same type of character each time. This one, I found this irritating because there's so many things where you have this, this disruptor, comes into the kind of uptight setting and kind of takes it over and wins everybody over. Like I said, you've seen Sister Act, right? Whoopi Goldberg shows up, stuffy old convent, and they're singing the old-timey music, and they're all too rigid. And then what do you know? She, it turns out that she teaches them how to loosen up, and their music is even better because, she has that to contribute. And
we can turn the Supremes hits into gospel songs, into hymns.
Yeah, but again, like any number of Vince Vaughn movies, or, Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, like this thing of like, oh yeah, this kind of wild guy that actually like, he really knows the score and he's going to kind of like melt our hearts and win us over.
Well, and I don't think you're wrong. And just note that all of your comparisons had to come from movies because it's hard to do that well in the sitcom format.
But what I'm saying is that it's like that premise is very familiar, but that's fine. What bothers me is that there's this version of it. There's a certain like vanity to it or a self-servingness to it. The way this character is presented, the way this whole group is presented, it just seems so ungenerous to all the other characters. Like not just the Lauren Benanti therapist character, but just the way everybody, like this guy just kind of strolls into everybody's life and makes everything better, you know?
But he doesn't.
Just like it's not just the success at the therapy. Like there's this quality to it to me of like that thing of like, oh yes, I have a lot of weaknesses. I care too much. I work too hard, where it's like this character is supposed to be so flawed. And yet it's like, he just somehow ends up seeming like so, like ultimately so like sort of wise and benevolent, and like everybody likes him. And like, there's just something about it where I just sort of picture him going like, okay, so here's this. So there's a therapist, right? But she's all uptight. She doesn't know what she's talking about. There's all these different people, and it ends with everybody's running in the street and they're so happy and they're wearing these ridiculous costumes. And it's all because I taught them to let go of these dumb old rules and just have fun, you know? And like, there's just something about it that, again, like there are versions of that story that work for me, and I don't know what the difference is. It's like to me, it's like he doesn't have any real flaws. It seems all set up to like valorize him.
I feel like you're expecting more character development than a 22-minute introductory ensemble type of show can really give you.
Go
and
ahead.
I think that was the exact same, to compare it to a show that you've watched the entire thing of, that was the exact same criticism that you had about Community when you first watched it.
Well, I'll say that,
and you turned the corner when you watched more.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the difference with that, because I agree. I had that comparison also. Community got better because it ditched Joel McHale as the main character. And anytime it went back to him and that sort of like, okay, everybody, fun is fun, but let's have this white guy in the middle of the cast kind of give us all the sort of the through line, give us all the crux of the episode. I did not like that. I did not like the idea that he was the one that had to kind of whip them into shape. It's like, no, he's a creep. He doesn't have this like wisdom because he just happens to be the 6 foot tall, good looking white guy.
Right.
And that's the same kind of deal.
That's what they played into in Community. In this show, again, I'm just going to invite you to watch more episodes.
Sure.
Like the difference is that we're always going to, because he is the center of the show in a way that Community was not, right?
Yeah.
Because we will always get to see Ryan, his character, in group and at work and in his relationships that somehow kind of merge the two groups together, right? So yes, it is going to focus more on him, but what that focus does is it provides, yes, in group, he ends up being relatively successful in this episode, but at work, he was failing miserably in this episode. And we do get to see that back and forth where it's like when one thing's going well, he's being like an asshole at group. And so there's always that balance. I don't remember the episodes well enough to know if there was ever one where it was like he was just failing at everything. Well, I'm sure there was.
Everything in this seems set up as like pins for him to knock down, of just like winning everybody over and being the smartest, funniest person in the room. And yeah, it just like bugged me. It just seemed like ungenerous, you know?
I think that you should go on and watch more episodes.
All right. Well, let's see the latest sitcom in which Matthew Perry plays some sort of sports-related journalist, The Odd Couple.
Season 1, episode 12, the season finale of The Odd Couple.
Yeah. So we're, of course, talking about the new Odd Couple.
Yes.
The
2015.
I don't even know if it's the newest. I feel like there's been
probably another
a
one.
new Odd Couple where they're like women again. I don't know. There's been many versions
Yes.
of the Odd Couple.
Yeah, it's a great story.
I will say the original movie with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau is one of my favorite pieces of comedy of all time. That is a true, I could just watch it again and again, comfort blanket of a film. Never got super into the TV show. We've covered it at least once for our Christmas Carol episode.
Yeah.
And I think to me, I always, Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon are both so good, but I think the comparison specifically of the Tony Randall TV version of Felix Unger versus the Jack Lemmon one, there's nothing against Tony Randall, but he seemed like a kind of a cartoon character. Oh, I'm so proper and I talk so fancy. Whereas Jack Lemmon as Felix was just this beautifully sad and it's such a perfect performance to me. Him as that character, so funny and so melancholy that the Tony Randall thing, when I would see it, would just be like, oh, well, okay, that's funny, but that's the TV version. Yeah. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit more of the version that this new one is kind of inspired by. But the new Odd Couple, this is going to be different from all the other shows we're talking about because Matthew Perry is sharing the spotlight.
That's right. That's he gets to sort of be ensembled again, right? But it's the two main characters. You have Thomas Lennon, and they were in 17 again together a bunch of years before this came out, right?
Yeah, it was 5 or 6 years prior. This is just such an interesting, and I would think maybe a little humbling situation for Matthew Perry, because both of these guys, I was very aware of both of these guys in the 90s when they were making their original claims to fame. Matthew Perry was making $1 million an episode on Friends. Yes. Thomas Lennon was, down the block at NYU, making The State on MTV, for probably like $110 an episode.
Right? Exactly.
Thomas Lennon was my personal favorite of the 11 members of The State. He's in Reno 911, a handful of other movies. He, like most of those guys, Michael Ian Black, so many of them were, just popped up here and there. Latrulio ended up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes.
So Thomas Lennon, loved him in the 90s on The State, Viva Variety, etc. And it's just so interesting to find.
Throughout those years in between, he was just he would pop up in every sitcom for an episode,
or movies, beloved,
like a random character actor kind of showing up everywhere. That's why I love the people from The State, because they literally turn up everywhere.
And here's the thing, the opposite of a Matthew Perry type career, where it's like, I can only appear in something if it's a starring vehicle built around me, $40 million budget or more, it's like, and so to have
that's
them,
just the ask, you know what I mean? That's not like him forcing that.
No,
right?
Yes and no, but it's the two of them arriving at this place together, and I do wonder if, because of them, Thomas Lennon, like you said, he's the best friend character in 17 again. Yeah, they interact a lot, and I wonder if maybe they just got along well on that movie, and Perry was like, hey, why not that guy?
Yeah, well, so would it surprise you to hear that before Mr. Sunshine, before Go On, in 2008, 2009, Matthew Perry is pitching NBC, he's pitching the network on The Odd Couple.
Interesting.
With him in it and Thomas Lennon, right?
Really?
Because they had already done that movie together.
Oh, okay. So this is 2000s.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. 2008, 9,
yes.
Late 2000s. And obviously that was, Thomas Lennon was the question mark, right? Like, it was like, well, we want these two, I want me and him, but I'll take just me, kind of a thing. Cause it was like, he was the star, right? So he was pitching this. They thought it was getting a green light for the 2010 season. It did not. And then he did Mr. Sunshine in 2011. And in 2012, he did Go On. And then you've got Studio 60 all in the mix in there somewhere too, right? And then he finally gets the yes for The Odd Couple. And now at this point, by the time he's got the yes for The Odd Couple, I don't know if he has more clout that he's like, this is who Thomas Lennon is doing this, or Thomas Lennon has gained his own clout because
I think he has. At that point, you don't like... yes, Thomas Lennon is not, a marquee name the way Matthew Perry is, but people in the position of casting a thing would absolutely know who he is
exactly
at that point. And also, just budget-wise, maybe it helps out where it's like, oh, okay,
his
if we
ask
need to...
is not as big as his.
Yeah, maybe between the two of them, it sort of amounts to like one major sitcom's salary. But anyway, so here we are, 2010's getting a reboot of The Odd Couple. Now, thanks to the Becca rule, we covered this Audit Couple episode, but you and I have watched the pilot episode of this for fun. And I remember at the time our take being that we were kind of disappointed in Perry, that Thomas Lennon was really bringing it as this sort of fun new take on Oscar. And it was a while back. I don't remember it that well. I just remember feeling like, oh, Perry seems like a little uninspired, a little just kind of like going through the motions.
Right. And now that we know what we know about how he was recovered, but yet also taking this, medicine that was supposed to help with this pain, but would not have this addictive thing, and that is eventually how he ended up, accidentally dying. And so you can see his speech is slurred. He's slower on the uptake. And when you watch 3 Matthew Perry shows throughout the years, and then the last 2 shows were within the same 2010 to 2015 time span. They're within 3-4 years of each other. You just see a total difference. He is kind of like a doddering old man in terms of the way he's picking up cues, and it's sad.
Yeah, I wouldn't go. This isn't Joe Biden at the debate. I wouldn't.
No,
go
it's not that far. But I mean, it is drastically different in a very short amount of time.
I wonder if it is my different expectation, remembering that last experience, because it did make that impression on me when we watched that pilot episode. Watching this one for this podcast, I didn't feel that way as much.
That's so interesting.
I'm sure they were made
so
basically
much
the same
harder.
time.
Yeah, it hit me so much harder, particularly when, because whatever, like you said, Thomas Lennon, he is playing Felix like a whirling dervish. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is very different than the Jack Lemmon version of it. You were talking about your origin, your Odd Couple origin story. For me, I get to be very snobby right now. I have the dramaturg experience. I was very familiar with the script, having done the scenes in drama class, and then we did the show. We did The Odd Couple. I was one of the Pigeon sisters, and so just being involved with it that way. I had sort of in passing seen The Odd Couple TV show. That was probably my first experience, but didn't really register, didn't think much of it. It wasn't something I sought out to watch until we started doing the scenes and then did the show at my high school. And so I started seeking out Odd Couple things, and at that time, it was reading the TV guide to find when The Odd Couple was on, So I was seeing more of the television show, so that by the time I actually came to the movie and saw Jack Lemmon's performance, I had all those other Felixes in mind. And you're right about his is so different, and it is so sad in this way. that like makes you really empathize with this character that is pretty ridiculous, and he's able to be silly but still like be kind of grounded. And anyway, no, it's a wonderful performance. Well, but I just don't think you can be that nuanced on 22
it's the
minutes.
Difference between like, it's just so funny that like in the, it was probably like late 50s maybe when he was first putting together that play. And it is a point where you can go like, hey guys, I've got this idea. It's an odd couple. It's two people that have to live together, but one of them is really uptight and messy, and one of them
there was no other origin story for this.
Like what
Shakespeare didn't write an odd couple.
No, but what I'm saying is that like that movie, like and the play, like obviously it is a comedy and everything. It is a sitcom in a sense, a situational comedy. But at that time, like it's still treated with such sincerity and such sort of like, well, let's see, like what would it be like for these two guys who now live with each other as roommates? And that idea has now, like we've talked about it ourselves as just this idea that gets bounced around from sitcom to sitcom. Oh, Larry's got to move in with so-and-so this time. I guess it's another Odd Couple thing, But so, yeah, you're right that at this point now as a TV show, it can't, like, the Jack Lemmon version of Felix Unger belongs in like an indie movie house or something, Yeah, I think Thomas Lennon is doing a little bit more of the Tony Randall thing, and just his own, similar to the character he played in 17 Again, he's a sketch comedy actor, so he's got tons of different modes, and he can be a silly Quasimodo guy, or, an Italian, or this kind of guy. I like
What was that?
No regrets. No regrets. I think I made myself perfectly clear. Thomas Lennon
Greatest
himself.
Italian accent I've ever heard.
Could not do better. Anyway, he's got all kinds of modes that he can go in, but when he's kind of like playing himself, or like a sort of exaggerated version of himself, like, oh, I'm actually kind of a buttoned up little, kind of like a waspy Woody Allen almost.
Right.
That's, like this is the mode that he's in, like it is sort of in his wheelhouse. So, yeah, it makes sense. And The Odd Couple, that's the show.
Right. And that was just the premise of it, right? So, but yeah, the story of this episode is Felix had gotten audited at some point in the past, and he was so upset that he'd been called down to the IRS office because he was pristine in his bookkeeping. And he goes on a rant and says, some people like Oscar Madison, they round off zeros here and do that. Yeah. And I never do
he
that.
Goes, it's even more silly than that. He goes like, well, my roommate did something like that. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Oscar Madison, you dot that I right now.
Right. Exactly. And so then we find out that Oscar is getting audited. And it's from 5 years ago, which was when he was still married. So his wife, played by Lauren Graham, who Matthew Perry had dated or was dating at the time.
This definitely, I didn't even know about their real life thing, but this... Even without that, this is stunt casting.
Oh, yeah,
right?
totally.
You get the guy from Friends.
She's like on Parenthood or whatever that show was at the time.
Yeah, if you just imagine like popular TV as all one big universe, then sure. Not Lorelai? What's her name?
Yeah, she's Lorelai.
Mm-hmm. Lorelai Gilmore,
yeah.
of course, and
Chandler Bing,
exactly,
100%. But so she comes in with her fast dialogue, and you got Thomas Lennon already going with his fast dialogue, and his love interest, who's like an amalgam of the Pigeon Sisters, is Lindsay Sloan. She
Libby
lives upstairs.
From Sabrina.
Right, and she is in How I Met Your Mother, and she's in a bunch of stuff. Like, she just is one of these actors that, she's like Judy Greer. She's the best friend in every movie, and then when she's on TV shows, she's like the, fourth character that is like recurring.
Sometimes she's bad. Again, like Judy Greer. Greer. Sometimes she's bad, sometimes she's nice.
Right.
But there's a whole thing going on with that. She's got a crush on Oscar, and she's having a Felix, having a hard time. But yeah, this is basically a very silly sitcom-y thing where because of this audit, you know, and again, I don't think this is how it would play out in real life.
Right.
They have to physically get together in Oscar and Felix's living room, him and his ex-wife.
Yes.
And
pour
go
over
through
every
all their
receipt.
documents and stuff. And the whole thing, again, very sitcom-y. Felix is like, what do I do? I think this is all my fault.
Like a man who makes as much money as the famous Oscar Madison, who is not only a sports journalist, but like a sports commentator that has agents and gets like side gigs and endorsement deals and that kind of stuff. Like that guy, that wealthy of a guy, doesn't have a fucking accountant to do this for him.
In the original movie, they have there's a line where he says like, I'm the highest paid sports writer in the country and I haven't saved more than like $4.17 or something. It's all just part of him being irresponsible.
Bad with money.
But yeah, so Felix feels guilty because he thinks the whole thing is his fault because he mentioned Oscar's name and it, you know, in true sitcom fashion, he's not telling them, he's keeping it to himself. And so he confides in his girl, his lady friend, and she suggests like, well, do something helpful.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole episode, is him being like physically in the middle
between
of the two of them.
Yeah.
And sort of helping them go through these documents and in turn helping them communicate with each other, helping her, you know, oh, Oscar doesn't like it when you make blanket statements about what he does. And, you know, Oscar, she doesn't like it when you, I don't know, don't listen to her, or, you know, I don't know what his
don't
things
let
are.
her finish her sentences.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, and so, you know, it's like, honestly, like that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
We get a sort of like, they briefly get back together, they hook up.
Right. They have like a one night stand, and then she in the morning is like, you know, maybe we should give this a go. And he's like, I don't know, like, you know, without Felix in between us, like we weren't able to speak. How long do you think this is going to last? And so they just kind of leave it. This show ran for technically 3 seasons, but the last season was only a half season. We found out that they were canceled because Matthew Perry during the mid-season break tweeted, well, they've painted my face. They've painted green over my face on the Odd Couple set doors, like into the studio. And he said, fair enough to say, I think we're canceled or whatever.
Well, and so this is the season finale, and it's episode 12. So this is a half season also. So
this
really,
is the, oh, right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
really you've got seasons 1, 2, and 3, but really 2 seasons.
Yes.
And at the end of this, you know, this is the season finale, and we get this sort of sincere moment with Oscar and Felix. It's really, they're just saying like, here are the rules about knocking, so we don't, walk in on each other banging the ladies anymore.
Right.
But,
because he finally hooks up with Lindsay Sloan's
from
character.
Sabrina.
Yeah.
But
her
so
name's Emily in this.
Okay. But it bleeds over into this like, you know what, buddy, like you've, you're helping me or whatever. It made me realize, just like that original show, they are playing out that original story over this season.
Yes.
And this is analogous, vaguely to that part in the play and in the movie where they kind of go like, he says like, Felix, I think you're tops or something like that.
Yes, exactly. And then the button is them back to at each other's throats so we can have the next episode go in the same direction, and they're already frustrated with each other, right? Because the button is Felix finally comes clean.
Yes, he comes clean. I wrote a la Screech, where just for no reason he goes, okay, so I guess we're even now. And they're like, what are you talking about?
What do you mean we're even?
Never mind. Just totally pulls a Screech and gives away the secret for no reason.
And then it ends on them running out of the room, and Felix running out of the room and Oscar running after him. So, like I said, you can start the next episode with the frustrations high.
Yeah. Yeah. This one, I like this better than the other ones. Mainly,
I disagree.
Fair enough. Mainly for the reason that I said, that I like that it pairs him up with somebody else who I happen to like even more maybe than Matthew Perry,
absolutely.
frankly.
He's so great, and it's a great pairing.
And that it puts him in a place where, and again, I'm maybe trading on what I know about the Odd Couple in general, where the two of them do have real flaws. And it's not just going to be like either a bunch of crazy people bouncing off of him, like in the Arena show, or a bunch of people being helped by him, like in the Therapy show. To me, it just the whole like setup of it is a little more like, I just feel like more on solid ground. Yeah. I wish it were funnier though. I wish the jokes were funnier and it just had funnier stuff.
But, and that's the exact reason that I'm the other way around, right? All of the things that you said you like about it, I like about it. And to me, it doesn't outweigh the fact that the timing is so bad. And the reason the timing is so bad is because Matthew Perry isn't as quick as he used to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes this one hard to watch for me. And even without the sympathy factor, it would be a frustration factor. Like, why is he not picking up cues? I've watched him do it his whole life.
Yeah.
And it's not... Like, it's a bummer. And I think the only reason these characters have a background in your mind is because of what you know about The Odd Couple. Because this is like... The only reason this show is good is because it has a Neil Simon template. You know what I mean? Like, it is not stronger than a group of people creating from scratch some really interesting characters that you want to get to know over the course of a season, which is what is happening in Go On.
Yeah, I think you're kind of right that maybe in this particular case, I like that we're back to a CBS sort of primetime network show.
Yeah.
And this is very much down the middle, you know, even if it weren't literally a remake of a show from the 70s, it's still, you know, if it were called something else, it still is, yes, a very familiar, comfortable setup, like we said, with actors that we know very well. And even with the sort of like deteriorated state that you're talking about, Matthew Perry and Thomas Lennon bring so much to the characters that they do imbue it with a personality and a history and everything. But yeah, you said before, you know, it all goes back to the writing, and I think that's true in this also. Like just these CBS sitcom writers are not bringing the heat that, you know, their counterparts over at New Girl or whatever are doing, enough, yeah. You know, How I Met Your Mother or whatever. And so, yeah, for that reason, I don't think it's a great show, but it just goes down easier for me. Whereas those other ones, you're right, they are doing something different. And to me, it's just like, I don't like it as much. Here's like looking back over all this, over Mr. Perry in general, like the feeling I'm starting to have, thinking about all these, thinking about the movies, like he is up there in terms of like one of the all-time like sort of charming people where you go like, yeah, you know, like I might actually, if I were flipping through channels, I might keep on serving Sarah for a few minutes because Matthew Perry, you know, like they're just, you know, like I said before, that, you know, these dumb movies that would have no appeal. You're just like, but I don't know, that guy's funny. And so it makes sense to me why he did keep getting all of these opportunities, even if for whatever reason these shows didn't work out. He is always charming and funny, like we said. I think there is a sort of vanity to these roles, and I don't mean in the sense of like him particular, like, oh, he's a pompous asshole. I mean more like, again, when you're coming from that place where you're making $1 million an episode on Friends, you have this whole machinery behind you. Yeah. Like it is possible to sort of fight against the machine. But it maybe takes more, I don't know, takes more effort than most of the people have. so much of these projects being mediocre, I think, comes from the fact that they have to be these starring vehicles built around him. I
completely agree.
If he had been willing to take like small roles in a Coen Brothers movie or something.
Or if he, not just in a Coen Brothers movie, if he had been willing to do ensemble work long before he got to the place where he lost his ability to tell a joke in the right time, it would have been, he would have had a different career. We would be seeing someone like Ted Danson, who has gone on from Cheers to have multiple multi-season, successful, critically and ratings-wise sitcoms. But that's because he was always like, after his first one, after Cheers crashed and burned, he was like, I'm not the star. I'm on
and
the
he
team.
knows Ted Danson, similar to some of like Michael J. Fox and some of the other people we celebrate.
He's like a handsome, charming dude.
Yeah, but he knows how to really kid himself, truly, how to really hone in on his own sort of weaknesses and play the fool. I think Matthew Perry is really good at reacting, like I said, being startled, being nonplussed, being perturbed. He's good at, of course, the sarcasm and the surliness and everything. Yeah, but there seems to be an unwillingness to go that extra step the way those other guys do and really be, again, that lack of vanity, that lack of, hubris, and be like, no, I really am going to be the buffoon or the butt of the joke, or I'm going to play a character with true flaws.
He got famous before he got to that week at acting school or something.
Yeah. Well, you think of all of these characters are like some sort of authority figure or celebrity or something. Like there's just, I don't know. There's, And when Danson plays an authority figure like the mayor, he's able to just make it like a total, like this guy is an idiot. Like Steve Carell in The Office, he is an idiot, and Perry, that just wasn't quite his thing.
But now I got to go back to Studio 60 though, because as Matt Albee in Studio 60, he is like, he plays that fight, that inner struggle that you have with yourself of like, am I, this big personality, take charge, whatever, or am I just this totally insecure, like can't get the girl kind of loser, right? And so that, it's not that he can't do drama, right? And as much as he might have fought it, it's just that he needs Aaron Sorkin's writing to do it. It's not going to happen for him in a sitcom, right?
Yeah. But look, like we said at the beginning, they all dealt with this, and not just on that show, all of these superstars that gave us these amazing characters, like they, in a sense, as much as, we're criticizing some of this, it's like, this is kind of the best that you could hope for. All these different characters, all these different shows, and it's just like, it is a pretty legit body of work.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if I think his therapy show is bullshit.
Oh my God. It is the best one of the bunch. Hands down. I can't believe you.
All right. Any final words? Have we done it?
Go On is the best one. You suck. Goodbye.
All right. So much for the oeuvre of Matt Perry. What are we talking about next week? That is a mystery, even to us. But for now, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.